Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 6032 of Kelly's Lockdown Lunch with me, Kelly Ransom. I'm coming to you live right now from Boston, Massachusetts, where I've been locked down for I don't even know anymore. People say 8 weeks, so let's just go with that. That sounds good. For those of you who have never tuned into this, I started this broadcast on April 1st, 2020, so that I could have something to do while I was taking my lunch break from working from home, and to create a little time capsule for all of us of stories of, from all over of what's going on right now and how we're all dealing with it, so that we can all look back at this in 5 years on YouTube and laugh, hopefully. I am so happy today to have such a badass on as a guest. I am very excited to introduce all of you to Janelle St. Charles. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate
you. Janelle is coming live from Jamaica Plain, and she is a school social worker. So we will talk all about what the heck that's been like during all of this. But I must know, because I'm not quite sure. Janelle, what day is it?
Today's Monday. It's May 11th.
That sounds
May 11th.
acceptable.
Yes, because my dad's birthday is tomorrow, and his birthday is the 12th. So yes, today's the 11th.
A Taurus? Is that a Taurus?
I believe so, yes.
Ah, very nice. Well, happy birthday to your dad.
Thank you. I'll pass the message along when I talk to him tomorrow.
And happy Mother's Day, belated, to everyone who cares about that stuff. So, I ask everyone, and I'm going to ask you, how did this whole situation go down personally for you?
Sure. So, my last day of school was March 13th. So leading up to that week, or even the week before that, and then even during that week, I was seeing the news and like places closing. And even at that point, I was like, this really isn't, like, it's not really that big of a deal. I didn't expect school to close. And then Wednesday, I think everything changed. And I was like, all right, I guess this is a bigger deal than I thought that it was. But when they canceled school on the 13th, I genuinely expected that we would only be out for 2 weeks. And then when we and then when as those 2 weeks started to progress and things started getting worse and worse and worse, I was like, okay, I guess we're not going to go back. I think our original return date was like April 1st, whatever that first Monday of April was.
Yeah.
And then we just kept getting updates from our central office team. And yeah, little by little, they were just like, it was initially a temporary plan to learn remotely. And I don't think it was real for me until school was canceled. Because I was,
They did that a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, they canceled school for the year, I think like the Tuesday or Wednesday of April break. So that's when it got, so April like 15th or 16th, I think.
Okay.
Maybe somewhere around there. But initially in March, when all this stuff started, it wasn't real to me until they decided to cancel school. And I was like, oh, okay, so this actually is a big deal. But again, I fully expected to return at some point. I didn't really fully prepare to be working remotely for the remainder of the school year. So it's
definitely so weird for everyone who works in the schools, though. It's just like,
it's definitely wild.
Oh, you're not going back. That's it. Like, what?
Right.
But it makes sense. So
yeah, I get it. I don't agree with it, but I couldn't say I don't agree, because that implies we should be back in school. I wish that it was different, but I get it. Like, I wish that we were in the building. It's definitely not the same doing this job, even remotely the same as doing this job online. But I mean, we're doing the best that we can, I think.
Yes, I think that is a lot of people right now. So I just like to ask everyone to explain what they do, because I don't necessarily understand and people watching might not. So what does a school social worker do?
Sure. So there's my job is composed of a lot of different things depending on the day. So like, the main part of my job is meeting with students who have counseling on what's called an IEP. So an IEP is an individualized education plan, and it's based on a federal law, but it's essentially a legal binding document that provides additional support for students if they need that to access the learning. So sometimes kids have support for reading or for writing or for math. And then other times they need support for social emotional reasons. So if a student has counseling on their IEP, my primary role is to meet with that student once a week, typically once a week, for usually 30 minutes. Sometimes kids are in groups, sometimes kids meet individually, and then sometimes depending on the level of need for the student, they have individual and group. So I'm part of a team of 3. So there's myself and 2 other social workers. We serve 300 students.
Oh my God.
Well, that's how many the school has. We don't each meet with 100 kids. That would be insane. So that's our primary role. We're really lucky that we have so I say so many social workers. We only have 3, but there's a lot of schools that have 500 students that might have 1 social worker.
Right.
The other parts of my job are responding to crisis. So if there's kids that are making self-harm statements, or if there's kids that are struggling, doing check-ins with them. If a family is requesting support for services outside of school, part of our role is to connect families with services and resources in the community. What else do we do?
That's a lot.
Yeah, we do professional development for staff. We're there sort of as a support for staff. I mean, obviously, for ethical reasons, we can't be a counselor for a staff member, but they are always welcome to come to us, and then we can help them connect with supports if they need it. So and then as needed with the school, I do hallway duties and I do enrichments, and they're like, Miss St. Charles, we need someone to serve breakfast today. And I'm like, all right, I'm here. So working in a school, being a school social worker is a little different than being a social worker in the more traditional sense. But I love it.
Right. So you see them sort of in between classes, not like, is that how it works? They have a scheduled slot with you, or?
They do. Sometimes kids do miss class to meet with me, just because, I mean, I have probably 40 kids on my caseload, and I can't meet with 40 kids at lunch and study hall and then like their free period.
Yeah.
So sometimes kids do miss class. It's unfortunate that they're missing the content, but at the same time, they have counseling on their IEP for a reason, and they need that support to be more successful in the classroom. But it's a constant battle that we're fighting with teachers and leadership staff of like, what is more important in academic or counseling? And obviously I say counseling, and obviously most teachers are going to say academic, but trying to find that balance and making sure that if you are taking a kid from a class, that it's a class that they typically do better in, or a class that they're doing okay in, versus if a kid is failing something, not taking them from a class that they're failing, and trying to be mindful of that. But it's a challenge, and kids love missing class. Like that's the biggest.
I love missing class.
The biggest motivator to get kids to meet with me is they're like, oh, in their head, they're like, I don't actually really like this person, but she takes me from math, so I'll meet with her.
Whatever it takes, right? Like
exactly. So
I have to imagine that adapting what you do remotely must have been interesting, to say the least.
Interesting is, I think, the most comprehensive word that you could use to describe it.
How does it work?
It has definitely been a challenge. When I was in the 3 years of grad school that I did, there was never even, I don't think I had one conversation about what therapy or counseling would look like over a computer screen. And even in the five or so years that I've been working outside of school, this is not something that I ever imagined doing. Like I didn't even have this as an idea or something that could even be possible, let alone it being something that I had to participate in. I do not typically do very well with technology. And And with counseling, you lose a lot of that. Even though you can see people on video, you don't pick up on, on body language and
Right.
little nuances like you do when you're in person. A majority of my students don't like to video chat. I mainly use Google Hangouts because our email system at school is through Gmail, so it's the easiest. Kids already have that set up. They already know how to use Google. They don't have to add anything differently.
That's smart.
But a majority of my kids will just join in with the audio. They don't join in with the video, which is fine. I tell my students they have the option. If they don't feel comfortable on video, I would rather talk to them over the phone than not at all. But some of the students that I thought, it has also been discouraging because a lot of students I thought I had good relationships with at school, they have not wanted to engage with me outside of school.
Oh, that stinks.
So it can be discouraging, but it's getting better now because I'm not taking it as personally as I was when it first started.
Yeah, you kind of can't.
Because I was like, oh, what did I do? Like, why don't these kids want to talk to me? And then in talking with other staff, some of the students just don't really want to talk to anyone. Like, they'll do their work and submit it, but they don't join any of the classroom Google Hangouts. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's not just me.
I feel that. Like,
yeah,
I think that's a completely appropriate response.
And I have part of my job is doing groups with students. So it's a group of anywhere from usually 4 to 6 kids. And we meet during the school year, usually during their study hall period, right after lunch. And kids love coming to group. But there's a couple of groups. I hold the group every week via Google Hangout, and I send them the link every Monday morning or every Wednesday morning. Yeah. And 12:30, 1 o'clock rolls around for group, and it's just me all by myself.
What kind of things do you do in group? Is it like sharing or activities?
Yeah.
Or I've never experienced one.
Yeah, during the school year, we do. It also depends on the group because I have a group of 8th grade boys that I meet with. That I have a mini basketball hoop, and they do a really good job of sort of monitoring themselves, and like we start with them sharing like a positive and a negative for each week, and then a goal that they have for themselves like over the next week, and then we do that at the beginning of each quarter. But I have some groups that need a very structured group. So like a schedule written on the wall. We'll do this for 10 minutes, this for 10 minutes, and then this for 10 minutes. So those are the groups that struggle during the hangout because a lot of the things that I do, a lot of the games and activities that I do during the school year just don't work remotely.
Right.
And so it's a lot of conversation, and some of the students I meet with just don't have the capacity to have a conversation for 30 minutes. And it's really,
I get that.
I also get that as an adult. Working with middle schoolers too, if you're playing a game with them, and younger students, if you're playing a game with them and your focus is the game and not necessarily what you're talking about, you sort of just kind of start talking and start sharing. So you're not necessarily tricking them into sharing, but you are taking the focus, you're shifting the focus to something else, into something visual. So then they just kind of start sharing and they talk to each other. So it's definitely been an added challenge not having that kind of distraction for kids to.
So what have you been doing? Just sort of checking in? And
I sort of check in with kids. I talk a lot about, if they're watching anything good on TV or if they've seen any good movies. I try to ask some of my, if I know a student is able to go outside, I try to, talk to them like, oh, did you have any outside time this week? But that's it's something you can't talk about with all kids because some of my students they don't live in a neighborhood where they can go outside.
Yeah.
Even before COVID, they just don't live in a safe part of the city or where their parents feel comfortable letting them go outside.
Yeah.
I have some students who have not been outside since we left school.
Oh my gosh.
Because most of them don't go to the grocery store with their parents, or they might have only been out a few times to go to the store. So that I try to focus the conversations around what are you and your family doing to stay connected, but also to keep yourselves happy.
Yeah.
We have a lot of kids that are struggling to complete work, but honestly, I don't really care. I should care because I work at a school, but at the same time, like we need to, my focus is more on students' well-being and how they're keeping themselves safe. Are they eating enough? Are they staying on a semi-regular sleep schedule? What do they do each day that brings them joy or makes them happy? Because at the end of the day, like we can make up the gaps and make up the things and reteach the things that either kids missed or kids aren't learning. But if the brain is traumatized from this experience, then it's going to be way harder to teach those academic skills.
That's so true.
And teaching middle schoolers is hard to begin with. I would argue that it's the hardest age group to teach.
What's the age range of middle school? It's been too long for me.
Like 11 to 14. So kids when they start sixth grade are usually around 11, and most students are 14 or 15 when they finish the 8th grade year. So it's hard enough anyway to work with middle school students. Now add on top of that, if you're trying to teach a traumatized brain of a middle school student, it's I don't want to say it's impossible, but it makes things so much harder than they already are. So I try to focus with kids on like, take care of yourself. School will be there when you get back. Like everybody across the country, across the world is in the same position. I have some kids that are really stressed out about being retained or repeating this year.
Are they kind of easing that, I heard?
My understanding is that the mayor assured people that every kid was going to be moved up to the next grade. But my other understanding is that if you are a charter school or a private school, that you have more flexibility in that. Like you can make your own, as a BPS school, you can't retain any kids. But if you are a charter or a private school within the city of Boston, then you have more of an option to retain students.
Yeah.
I'm typically not part of those conversations at school. They tend to be between the teachers, the families, and our leadership team. Those conversations typically start around now if we were in a regular school year, but I don't know how things are going to look. So I've just been reassuring kids, like, everybody's in the same boat. Do what you can, take care of yourself, reach out if you need support, do the best that you can. But this is not like, there are other things that we need to focus on right now.
Yeah.
In addition to school.
It must be so scary for your 8th graders that, boom, they're just gonna go on and be in high school next year.
Yep. And there's
is your school one that they change schools, or is it?
So we have Match has 3 different campuses. So it's K1 through 5th grade in Hyde Park, and then the middle school is 6th grade through 8th grade in Jamaica Plain, and then the high school is 9 through 12, and they're over by BU. So once kids start in the match system, they're guaranteed a space every year until they want to leave or until the family decides to pull them. Nice. So any 8th grader that's at match now will automatically get sent to the high school unless their family makes a decision for them to go elsewhere. But the middle school is much more accessible for a lot of our kids based on where they live. But getting to the high school by BU, that's a long way to commute for kids who live in Dorchester or Hyde Park or Roslindale. Yeah. So I know that typically in the spring, we do school visits with some students, that struggle with transitions.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to do that this year.
That's so scary for them. Scary. I feel bad for them.
And I know that there's a lot of, there's some families that are worried. There's some families who were kind of thinking about, I'm going to see how the rest of this school year goes, and then I'll make a decision if my child's going to stay at match. But they're not they're not learning in a traditional environment. So you really have the best data to make that decision. So I know that it's scary for families, especially those kids that are going to be transitioning to a new school building. Yeah. So I think about our 5th graders who are going to be going from an elementary school and having the same teacher every single day, all day, every day, to making a shift to the middle school where they have 5 or 6 different teachers throughout the day. And
I mean, it's a shock for someone not on an IEP.
Right.
Like, it's a transition, and it's weird.
And typically in the spring, like some of the teachers and like the student support team, so myself and the deans will go down to the 5th graders and do activities with them, and we'll introduce ourselves so they at least know who the counselors are.
That's nice.
But we're not going to be able to do that this year. So I think we're trying to brainstorm, like maybe making a video that we can send to the social workers at the elementary school they can share with families. But it's, it's like school remotely is so different.
Yep.
Like I miss, the first couple weeks I was like, oh, it's on vacation. Like we'll be back. I'm going to enjoy this time. But now I'm like, I really wish that I was back in the building. Yeah. Especially because I'm not returning to match next year.
Right, you're moving.
Yeah, I'm moving at the end of June. So I will not be able to say goodbye in person to any of my students. And a majority of the staff that I work with as well, I will need to say goodbye remotely. And doing termination with a middle schooler is difficult as it is.
Yeah.
But if it's remotely, it's even harder. So it just doesn't feel great that I have to do that. But on the other hand, I'm not going to let that change. I'm not going to let that change my timeline. It's just an unfortunate
life-changing decision, and you're going to do it either way. But I'm curious too. I mean, I know you'll be gone by then and stuff, but what about the summer? How do the youth stay? Are they engaged with their counselors during the summer typically, or is it kind of?
I think it depends. It's usually on a case-by-case basis. I was new to Match last year, so I did not maintain contact with any of my kids over the summer. I mean, families and kids had my work cell phone number, and I was like, I think I had a few hours each day that they could call me or text me if they needed anything.
Yeah.
But part of one of the important things with counseling and with therapy is like setting boundaries with clients and setting boundaries with students. Yeah. And we don't have school in the summer. So trying to set that boundary of, if you need something, you can reach out. But if there's ongoing support that's needed outside of school, ethically, I need to set them up with services that are community-based versus services that are based in the school. But I think, again, it depends on the student. It depends on the adult, because I know some teachers and staff in the building that have contact with kids all summer, but that's the relationship they have, with that student. So you can kind
I'm just so worried about these kids that you say that haven't left the house and stuff, you know, and now summer camps and summer programs are getting canceled. And I don't know what to do about it. I don't have a kid myself, but I hope that something is able to happen for them, because that is not great for someone to just stay in their house.
Yeah, my hope is that by the time the summer rolls around, they will have lifted some of the restrictions.
Yeah, so
that kids can enjoy outside time a little bit more. But it's also, some of the students I've talked to and families I've talked to, the reason that they don't want to go outside is because the information or the way that they're understanding the information about how contagious it is that if you're even near someone outside, that you can get sick. So there's some kids I'm trying to work with around giving them factual information so that they can, make an informed decision. But I also have to be careful to make sure that it's not being interpreted as me telling them to go outside and me telling them what they should do. And it's ultimately their family's decision. And just because something is right for me, and if I had kids, I would do things differently, it doesn't mean that my decision is what is the right thing for their family. So I've been trying to encourage kids. I'm like, well, if you can't get outside, open a window, get some fresh air, especially now that it's getting warmer.
Yeah.
But it smells like trash outside. I'm like, oh, sorry. So I'm like, even if you don't want to open the window, sit in front of the window in the sunlight for 10 minutes, even if you're on your phone or reading or something.
Yeah.
because that's the biggest thing I worry about is them not getting, the vitamin D that they need and getting the sunlight that our bodies need. But middle schoolers are stuck in their routines. And we have some kids who sleep all day. They go to bed at like 4 or 5 in the morning and they sleep till like 4 or 5 that afternoon. And then they get up and they do their work and then they have dinner and they're up all night watching TV or playing video games and they're, up until 5 or 6 the next morning.
I used to be like that.
It's wild.
When I was a teenager, that's exactly how I was.
Even if you had school?
I was a very disengaged student. Okay. So towards the end of my career in school, that was a normal day for me.
Yeah. It's going to be hard too. I think that's where I can find a little bit of relief in not going back is because some kids are in such a bad routine that they won't have to worry about that until the summer or until the end of the summer. Hopefully we return to school, but that's a time anyway when kids are struggling and when staff are struggling because everybody is getting back into their routine. So I think it'll make it a little bit easier because it's again sort of that natural time of transition. So I'm hoping kids and staff will be a little more patient with each other in the fall than if we return, say like in May.
Yeah, and it's going to be completely different for everyone. So it's just going to be a challenge. But you're going to Colorado.
I am.
Are you going to be working with youth there?
I am. So I accepted a job in March as a social emotional learning specialist at a middle school / high school just outside of the city.
That's awesome.
So I don't fully know what a social emotional learning specialist does, but part of my job,
you're gonna learn.
I am going to learn. Part of my job will be, it's also going to depend too on whether we're in the building or not in the building.
Yeah.
If we return into the building in the fall, my job will look very different than if we're doing this remotely. So part of my role will be some counseling similar to what I do now. But my understanding is the other part of my job will be working with the other counselors and the deans and like our assistant principal and some of our support staff in putting systems in place. So like one of the things that we want to work on is, what's it called? Sources of strength. So it's a program where kids can opt into it. So it'll be like a club or a class or something that meets, a few times a week. And it's about kids learning to identify strengths in themselves and how to use those strengths to connect with other students, but then also eventually having those kids be able to help other students recognize their own strengths.
I love
they
it.
also want to put some more what they call universal supports in place. So universal supports are things that might be more social emotional based or might be more trauma informed, but it's not specific to students who need that. It's something that every student in the building has access to. So it might be something simple like restructuring the way that a classroom is set up so that the door is easily accessible. One of the easiest ways to be a trauma sensitive classroom is to make sure that the door is easily accessible at all times.
Interesting.
And positioning the teacher's desk and the student's desks so that they're not blocking the entry and exit into into the classroom. Other simple things are like when a student comes into your classroom at the beginning, or if they have to leave and then come back because they were, sent to the office for like talking or being disruptive, greeting that student and welcoming that student back to your classroom. So again, trying to put some of those systems in place to make the school not only more trauma informed, but also more culturally responsive.
I love it.
So
that sounds like a great position.
I'm very excited. It's definitely going to be a challenge. It's what they call a pseudo supervisory role. So I won't
whatever that means.
I won't officially be supervising anybody, but I will be working closely with classroom teachers to help implement systems, help follow through with systems, and give and receive feedback. So I won't be anyone's like official supervisor, but I will be working closely to give feedback and, having those tough conversations with students and with staff. So I'm excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It'll be a challenge.
That's a ginormous leap to be moving.
Yes, it's
from Jamaica to Colorado.
Yes.
You've been living like alone during all of this. Are you going to do that in Colorado? Do you like living alone? Is this a thing you want to keep doing, or?
So I will not be living alone in Colorado. I was going back and forth about what I wanted to do because for the most part, I've enjoyed living alone. I think I would enjoy it more if it was my house.
Yeah.
But also if I was actually able to go out and do things.
Yeah.
But my worry was that if things don't return to normal by the time, or not normal, but if things don't, like if I'm not back in the school building when I move, I don't want to, if we still have to social distance and we're working from home, I don't want to be isolated in a studio apartment in a city that I've never lived in before. And so I have applied to live in a single family house with 2 other women that I don't know. But one of them used to work at the school that I will be working at. So we know.
The mail's here.
So we have some people in common. Because I was like, if we're stuck working from home for the next 6 months,
right.
I want to be able to.
That's moves everybody.
So rude. It would be nice to at least get to know a couple people that I live with.
Yeah.
Versus like having to make friends virtually.
And that's smart and mature and great that you know that you need to do that.
Yeah.
Even though it might, I don't know, be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I mean, it'll definitely be weird. Like I've never lived with people that I don't know before.
Yeah. No, it's weird. I promise you. But it can be great.
But it's a nice house. Like we have, I hope I'm not jinxing myself by saying this because I haven't gotten the approval yet. But there's like a yard for moose and it's literally across the street from a park. And on the other corner, there's a middle school. So people won't be able to come in and build, a huge high rise with 300 apartments in it. But I think in this like state of quarantine, I've realized that I could not live somewhere where I did not have outdoor space. And the few places that I could afford in Denver to live on my own were small studio apartments, which is fine, but they didn't have any designated outdoor space.
Yeah.
They had like a little cement square where I could sit, but it's like in the blazing sun and I'm a mile closer to the sun than I am here. So it just burned to a crisp.
I never realized how important even just like a little porch is right now during all of this. Because like you kind of take it for granted and then it becomes your safe space to be outside. So I get that.
Yeah, those were the 2 deciding factors, I think, when I was looking at the living situation also kind of fell into my lap. Somebody was like, my assistant principal was like, hey, so I know these 2 women that are looking for another roommate for this house. And I kind of just went from there. So things have been working out really well because I have this self-doubt of like, oh, should I be doing this? And then something will happen. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely what I should be doing.
Serendipity.
Yay.
So what have you been doing to like heal and take care of yourself? And what have you been doing or not been doing for your mental health right now? Because you have your mental health and then you have your students' mental health. You have a lot of mental health going on.
I do. So I think that I've healed as much as I can until I'm not living in this house anymore. I don't think I will be able to fully move through this breakup and until I'm living in a space that is my own. I have definitely been prioritizing myself over my job. I wasn't doing that when we were going into the school building because I didn't really feel like I needed to because I was in a different setting. So I was able to compartmentalize and I was like, all right, I'm at school. It's 7:10. My day is ready to start. Everything that happened last night or everything that's at home, it's almost like dropping a bag at the door and then just walking in. That has been much more challenging since I'm working in the same space that I'm also trying to heal in. So there's some days where I wake up and I'm just like, not necessarily in a bad mood, but I'm just kind of like meh.
It's the energy, yeah.
So those days I'm definitely not as productive, but I just try not to be too hard on myself. And I'm like, all right, well, today was kind of a wash, but tomorrow you have an opportunity to see if it's a better day. And I try not to set myself up of like, okay, I'm going to make tomorrow a better day. Cause I think you can do that in some ways. Like you can make the day as good or as bad as you want it to be. But in other ways you can't, because you can't rationalize away feelings. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've been doing for myself to help me heal. You know, the Capricorn, and I'm a Capricorn through and through. So I'm very logical. I need to rationalize things.
Yes.
If I'm feeling a certain way and I can't identify why, I'm like, well, it's not a real feeling, and I'll just be dismissive of it. So I've really tried to allow myself and give myself the space that if I feel sad, to just like cry. So like that's
so good to hear.
And
that is actually very hard to do.
It is very hard to do, and it's very uncomfortable. And my hope is that by being okay, being by myself and crying, that in the future, whether it's friendships or relationships or something at work, that I feel more comfortable being vulnerable in front of other people, because I feel okay doing it with myself. So like yesterday I was working on a baby quilt for a friend of mine, and I was listening to some music, and a song came on, and some of the lyrics in there, and I just started crying, and I just like sat for like 5 minutes at the dining room table, and I just kind of let myself cry. And then I was like, it just kind of stopped on its own. I didn't force it to stop. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm not really sure what that was all about. I don't really know where that came from. But I acknowledged it and I sat with it, and then I kind of I tried to move away from it and just let it be what it was, versus trying to understand it. Because sometimes
that's so healthy, Jesus.
I mean, I'm not like great at it. I'm getting better. But it's really, really hard. And I think sometimes I put this added pressure on myself because I am a mental health counselor, that I need to sort of have it all together all the time, which is like extremely unrealistic for anybody.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, again, be kinder with myself and just remind myself that like this living situation is temporary, but also that like this wound eventually will heal.
Yes,
and
it will.
giving myself that space and honoring how I feel, and reminding myself that just because I think something, it doesn't mean that it's true. Because sometimes I have these like wild ideas and these crazy thoughts, and sometimes I have these really self-deprecating thoughts and these really negative thoughts and blaming myself. And I have to take a step back and say, just because you thought this doesn't mean that it's true. So that's been something that has been really helpful.
You are eons beyond where I'm even close to, but you are a strong, badass bitch. That's it.
If anyone either listening now or watches this later and is either also going through, whether it's a breakup or like a really difficult time, and you're trying to empower yourself and take care of yourself, there's a woman that I work with that gave me this book a while ago because she was going through the same thing. It's called What a Time to Be Alone.
Ooh.
And it is written by a Nigerian woman. She's an author and a comedian. She's also an artist. And I like it because it's not like a chapter book. So on some of the pages, it'll be like 2 sentences. That's a quote, and
I love that.
Designs in the background. And then other times it might be a couple pages of reading, but I just kind of pick it up as I want to. I have some stuff that I've marked off with a Post-it note, that really, that I find helpful. So if anyone is looking for a book recommendation, 10 out of 10 recommend.
Yeah. Do you have any other recommendations for things to consume media-wise right now?
I think so. One of the things that's hard is like people have all this time on their hands, so they're doing a lot of more social media than they were before, and it's it's really easy to paint a picture that like your life in quarantine is this glamorous, this like glamorous thing. And for
I've been doing the opposite.
Yeah. And for some people, that's great. But for other people, that's not the case. So if you are active on social media, more so, I think it's more apparent on Instagram, but find and follow accounts that make you feel better and make you feel good about what you're doing and validate how you're feeling and validate what you're doing versus following accounts that make you think that you should be doing better and make you think that you should be doing more.
Do you have one that you really like?
I have a couple that I follow. One is Selfcare is for Everyone. That's actually where I got my sweatshirt.
What's it say?
It says mental health matters because May is also Mental Health Awareness Month. So I like Self-Care is for Everyone because sometimes it's like just an inspirational quote, but then other times they might link to a video or to an interview or to an article. So you can kind of use the tools as you see necessary. And then another one I really like is Female Collective. And again, it's just
I follow them, yeah.
It's mostly just inspirational quotes about like, you deserve what you want. One of my favorite things that I found from there that I actually have on my mirror in my bedroom, it says, are you really attracted to them or are you just lonely? Or do you really want to be with them or are you just lonely? And I think that now more than ever, this is a time where you have to ask yourself, like, do you really want to be connecting with this person or are you just feeling lonely? And most of the time it's just feeling lonely. And then if that's my answer, then I won't reach out.
That's really good advice. Oh, Janelle, you are just a freaking treasure. More mail. So for those of you who have not tuned in before, at the end of the broadcast, I always make sure that the guest gets the final word because you've heard enough of me talking. And I get to show off a pair of sunglasses, which I have a very wide collection of, and I like wearing them. So, Janelle, it is now your turn for the final word, and the floor is yours.
So, as I said before, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I think that this year it is even more important. It's even more important than it was in the past to really take care of your own mental health. Find things that work for you. So for some people, it's like, I know I've been working out a lot and that really helps me, but that's not going to help everybody. I have tried to journal, and sometimes that helps and sometimes that makes things worse. So I try that if it's making it worse, I try to put it down and find something else. But just because something works for someone, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. And that is okay. Like right now, it is okay not to be okay. I think that there is this pressure, sometimes from work culture, but also from, I think, our society in general, that like, oh, we have all this time on our hands. Now is the time to be productive. I mean, if you're able to do that, that's amazing. And I give you credit and like, congratulations to you. That's awesome. But if you're someone who just needs to get up and literally survive each day, that is also fine. Like, don't let other people tell you what you should and should not be doing during this time, and especially how you should or should not be feeling during this time. You know, we're in some ways in this together, but we also each need to take care of ourselves. So if you're able to and you have the capacity to, reach out to someone that you haven't talked to in a while. But if you're not able to do that and you need to just worry about yourself, that's also fine. This is not a time to test loyalties to people, test your loyalties or test other people's loyalties to you. And just keep in mind that everyone is struggling in one way or another. And try to assume the best in people. You know, if you see someone that's not wearing a mask, try to assume the best and be curious about why they're not wearing one. Or if you see people not social distancing, ask yourself why that's the case, and try to assume that they're doing it You're not doing it because there's a good reason. And don't assume that people are doing it because it's a lack of regard for the common good or a lack of regard for other people. The reality is that like sometimes people right now, not everyone has the option to social distance. You know, not everyone has the option to work from home. So we need to assume the best in each other instead of assuming the worst in each other, because we want people to assume the best in us. So if you want someone to assume the best in you, you have to be able to practice that and assume the best in other people, which is, again, easier said than done, but something to work on.
Those are words to live by. Shoot. Thank you for saying all of that. I have recently just started shouting from the mountaintops and being comfortable shouting the mountaintops of my attic apartment that I'm not okay.
Yeah, and that's okay.
And that's okay. And I'm going to be okay. Yep. But right now, I'm not. And I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a perfect Monday conversation. I am so happy that you took the time out of your day to be on, Janelle.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
You said some really great stuff that's going to mean things to people whenever they listen to this broadcast, if it's now or later or years from now. So thank you for being so amazing.
Thank you for being so amazing. And for, and for carving out this time of your busy schedule to, you know, honor people's experiences and allow people to share their experiences with others.
It's my pleasure. And I don't know why I'm doing it. I really don't, but I'm doing it because I feel like I have to do it.
Yep.
So.
Well, we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you to Janelle, and thank you everyone who was liking, commenting, sharing, all of this. We had a lot of people watching today. I hope you really took the time to absorb everything that Janelle said, because it's some great stuff. Tomorrow we have an artist on, Joel Van Patten, and we will hear all about what he's been doing during the lockdown. Janelle, thank you again. I'm sure we will talk soon.
We will.
Everyone, please stay safe, stay home if you can, wear a mask if you can, stay healthy, stay in good spirits, and it's okay to not be okay. Sit with that today, please. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.